forgive the change in background. I copied some, I copied some slides into this, and I was just lazy. That's really it. The point of this, the next 7 or so minutes, is for me to encourage you to finish strong. This is week 26, then we have 27, 28, 29, 30. And then I think we have 5 more weeks, but only 4 more weeks of instruction. Okay, so there's not that much left of the semester, which is crazy. So finish strong. Oh, Abby, so good to see you. Finish strong, and then I pray that many of you can carry on. That's the point. Now, I want to share with you a bit of a comparison between what you're getting compared to what I got. So, on the right-hand side is all of the text that I went through in my first year Hebrew class. Now, that text is passages of Scripture. So, all throughout the course, in the workbook, I translated, dozens and dozens of random clauses and verses and stuff. But it's a different skill to translate a verse and to be able to read a passage. They're different kinds of skills. And the whole goal is to be able to read passages. And there's 2 different kind of broad methods as far as getting you to there. One is to spend the entire year working on all the individual parts. And then once you've looked at all the individual parts, then in one big fell swoop at the end of the year, put it all together into finally reading passages. Or what I've chosen to do is to get you to read by just having you read all year long. And basically, what you got in the first semester, just with the first 7 stories, is equivalent in terms of word total compared to what I got all my first year. And then if we look second semester, we went through 9 stories, and then it will have been 7 weeks on Jonah, is more than I went through my entire second year of Hebrew. And so just to kind of show this kind of week by week, this is you guys, and this is me throughout my first year, right? So, and then here we are in week 26. This is where I am, and then this is where you are, okay? And pretty much from my second year of Hebrew on, as far as developing reading fluency, I've basically done it all on my own. Now, with that said, there are certain things that you're not getting. And you're not getting these things basically because of this format for the class. We only meet once a week for 2 hours. Basically, I've assigned all of the text that I would assign if I was teaching a 4-credit college class, but this is like a 2-credit class. So basically, we're getting through all the material, but with half of the instruction time. And so if you feel like your grammar is not so good, if you feel like your verb forms are not so good, grammar, verb forms, if you feel like parsing, whatever, is not so good, a lot of that is simply because that kind of stuff I would enforce more if I had twice as much time with you. Okay? So it's not your fault, and it's not even my fault. It's the fault in the format. Now, what I want to try to supplement in these last few weeks is basically that. That's why we're reading the text. That's why I'm asking you all the questions. That's why we'll spend some time on grammar, verb form kind of stuff, talking about the language more deductively. But basically, your success here in these last 5 weeks of the semester, it will be determinative of whether you'll be able to keep going with your Hebrew, basically. So if you finish the year and you're still not comfortable reading, you probably will never get into a habit of reading on your own without the structure and then accountability of this class. And so I know life can get kind of crazy, right? But it is an unfortunate truth that if you are too busy now to be investing time in learning to read these passages of Jonah well, life probably won't slow down in the future. And then you'll have more things against you. Now, at the end of the year, I'll give you resources like I've got a great a great book on how to it's called 12 Steps for Interpreting the Old Testament or whatever. So it's based how to interpret the Old Testament, and it's broken down into nice steps, and the author is fantastic, the content is amazing. And then I have my favorite intermediate Hebrew that I'll let you guys know about, intermediate Hebrew grammar that I'll let you guys know about, as well as for me, what was my plan as far as like a Hebrew reading plan. All that stuff as far as like what now, I'll give you at the end of the semester. But basically here, the point is just finish strong, and basically how you finish will be determinative of what Hebrew looks like in your future. Just because then it's going to be 100% all on you. And please take advantage of me and Marissa as much as you can till the end of the semester. Because I can promise we're yours now, but life for us, we have lots of demands on our time year to year, and next year we'll have different demands on our time, and so I can't make any promises after this year. Okay? All right.
That being said, just a quick note, if you are at the place where you feel like you're not to a reading fluency that you want to be for finishing out the year, the resources that you have from the year that we've already had are designed to be able to help you keep working through them. So you have the stories in their text, and you can keep working back through those early ones that just had, 20 or 30 words, and build yourself up again. So you do have resources if you're someone who has the time and you really do find that life slows down for you in another semester. So we want that to be there for you, and we don't want you to think like, oh, well, I'm hopeless now, I just should give up the last 5 weeks. Because being able to absorb as much as you can out of reading Jonah for these last few weeks is going to help you that much more as you go back and review the stories, if that's where you're at, or if you move forward on your own with new study.
That's true. All right. If you have your Jonah book, take it out, please. And let's begin in verse 7. So we'll have 50 minutes to be able to read and discuss this. These are going to be the questions that I'll ask. And as much as you can, try to answer with a full statement. Okay? So usually I'm just targeting a certain kind of word, but it's best practice when you speak Hebrew to try to speak saying a whole statement of who did what, basically.
And a lot of times you can get that right from the text, depending on what the question is.
Yep. Oh, and then remember, I will, when I ask you to read, I'll basically ask you to read to one of 3 points. So looking at verse 7, 1 point is the zakaf katon, which is the 2 dots on top of a letter. And usually each verse has 2 zakaf. Zakaf katon divides the verse into quarter. And the first zakaf katon is on goralot. So vayomeru ish. So on the 3rd box, the 2nd salmon-colored box, venapila goralot above the lamed is the zakaf katon. That's the quarter point in the verse. And then the half point in the verse is at the end of the next speech bubble under lanu. So under the lamed, that is the atnach. It looks kind of like a wishbone. That's half point. And then the 3/4 point, again, is the zakaf katon on top of goralot again. In the gray text box there in the middle, vayapilu goralot. And then you have the end of the verse, and that's called sof hapasuk. So sof meaning end, and pasuk is the Hebrew word for verse. And so what sof hapasuk, that is the 2 diamonds at the end of the verse. So the other 2, zakaf katon and atnach, those are accent marks. So it tells you which syllable you're supposed to put the primary stress. Sof hapasuk is at the end of the word. That's not even an accent mark. But that was, and remember, all of this comes from the Masoretes at about 800 AD. Many times it's interpretive as far as meaning, and it's an accurate guide to interpretation, but it's not an infallible guide to interpretation. So what's cool is learning Hebrew, you get a 2-for-1. You get the language, but then you also get this ancient commentary on the text. But the second thing, the ancient commentary on the text, is just that, a commentary. So, all right. Let's do this. Elisheva, hir'i ad hazakef hakaton.
ויאמרו איש אל רעהו לכו ונפילה גורלו.
טוב. שאול קרא עד האתנach.
Adam Hashelmi Haraha Hazot Lanu.
I'm going to do these verses in English, asking questions. What's significant about the Vayomeru Ish El Re'ehu construction? What does that mean when you have a plural verb followed by ish?
So each one.
Yes, so that's how you say each one did something. And then if you want to say it was a reciprocal action, like each person did something to another person, then you add the to his neighbor bit to it. So basically, they said to each other is how you would translate that. Lechu venapila goralot. Now, binyan is napila. Is basically is that the pa'al verb nafal?
I'm gonna say it is,
Okay.
but I could be wrong, so.
Yeah.
So this is how it is Hefiel. It is Hefiel. Now, this is the kind of method that I want you to be able to do when you're reading. So here you go, you've got Venapila Gorlo, and it's not footnoted. How I did the footnotes in this reader's book is the same way as far as what's numbered in the reader's Bible that I suggested to you. So if you're reading in your leather Hebrew Bible, that word wouldn't be footnoted either. And so we've given you all of the non-footnoted words, which is your vocab words. And so you first think, this is nafal, right? It's nafal unless it doesn't sound exactly like nafal. And basically what can't be explained by nafal is the chirik yod in the middle there. So nafal is nafal, and then what's the yiktol form? Yipol. Yipol. And so venapila, this is a yiktol form. If it was from nafal, then it would sound like yipol, and it would be nipol. So then it would be ve nipola goralot. Nipola doesn't sound quite like napila. It's close, but it's not quite. And so what sounds like napila? Well, you could get, your model Hefiel verb is hishlich yashlich. So the a-e vowel pattern is Hefiel. So what's the Hefiel verb, Hepiel? If nafal is to fall, what does Hepiel mean?
Cause to fall.
Yeah, so to drop, or here to throw down, right? Exactly. So venapila goralot vened'a beshel mi hara'a hazot lanu. Now, did you note, so I said the zakef katon is under goralot. You see there's also 2 dots above vened'a. When when the Masoretes put 2 zakef katons in a row, the first one is the more significant disjunctive mark. Okay? So the real marker of the quarter point is the first one. And here, I've often in the grammatical notes had you find the yiktol form. When I have you looking for a vav plus yiktol form, does anybody remember what that usually signifies when I have you look for it? Purpose. Purpose. What I've said is if you have an imperative followed by a ve yiktol. Now, here you have a ve yiktol in venapila. That's ve yiktol, and then you have a second one in vened'a. You can also get purpose in ve yiktol if it follows another ve yiktol. So basically, it's come. Let us throw, cast, drop lots so that we may know. The reason why they want to do the casting lots is so that they'll know something. I didn't explain the Beshelmi. Unfortunately, I don't know how I spaced, but I explained Beshelmi in the grammar point next week, not this week. Did anybody get tripped up over that? Yeah, it's a weird thing, and let me say this here, is that so I explain it in the grammar for the next week, and so I'll save it basically. But one Hebrew grammarian, he says this construction is not because of whom, it's not whose fault is it that this evil is upon us, but they're asking for whom did this evil come for. So God sent this evil for somebody. So basically, they're presupposing divine wrath here. They know, what they know in their worldview is that a God has sent this storm as a punishment for someone. And what they're asking, because, I mean, this is a really weird way to state a question. This construction only occurs in Jonah. The Beshelmi only occurs in Jonah. Vened'a Beshelmi Hara'a Hazod Lan. Yeah.
So when you look at that, Beshelmi, you say in the name, whose name it is in? Is that what that is?
Sure. So you have 4 different parts here. You have B,
Right?
you have She,
Right.
not Shem.
Or shall? Oh, I see.
It's actually She,
I see.
and then there's a L,
And
and then me. So, and then the B, I mentioned this in the lecture, but it's going to be because. So if you want to treat it woodenly, it's because of that to who?
okay.
But then I take lamed to be possessive, because of that which belongs to who, is more getting at it. But yeah, if I had to translate it super woodenly, that's how I would do it.
And the sh is short for a share, or another form of a share.
Yeah.
So Shelby is not a form of shalom.
No.
Ha.
Although if
Yeah.
you look at it, it
That-
almost
Yeah,
is
look,
like
it-
Right, yeah.
does.
my piece, to whom is my piece?
That's what I was thinking.
Right,
And my
yeah.
piece is- it's-
Uh-huh.
Which is, it's interesting. when you look at
Right.
it.
Yeah,
They're
the,
missing Bob, so, yeah.
For shalom.
so it,
Yeah, it was
so Beshelmi here in 1:7 is the same thing on the next page, Ba'asher Lemi,
in the second.
in the second speech bubble. So they're equivalent. If you switch out she for a share, they're identical. Beshelmi is equivalent in all of its parts to Ba'asher Lemi.
Jesse, do you see that shin used in other places for a share?
Oh yeah.
Oh, no, that's common.
So in modern
Right.
Hebrew, it's
It's
taken
all
over.
others, yeah.
She. So the history of it is she is a borrowed Phoenician form. It's a later occurrence in the language, and what's happened is that it's like totally taken over, so that in modern Hebrew it occurs all the time where you'd expect a share.
But in Hebrew, isn't that part of the context of Jonah? It's partially.
What's that?
Would this be, so there's like ancient Biblical Hebrew and then like late Biblical Hebrew?
Yeah.
Is Jonah in late Biblical Hebrew?
Later, yeah.
Or the early later, like 3 years? The early late. The middle one?
So
The Aramaic and
there's a whole article actually on a share versus she in the book of Jonah. And the author makes the point that she is the borrowed Phoenician form, and the sailors are likely Phoenician. And then you have this actually kind of, if you track the who says asher and who says she, you actually have this kind of code switching going on, where you have Jonah using, I forget the argument exactly, but you have Jonah he says she quite a bit of times. And then here the sailors, they say she in Beshelmi, but then they also say asher, but asher than me. It comes to a conclusion in the very last phrase where God uses she and asher, and their whole point is that God is not constrained to being just the God of the Hebrews, but he's God over all people. Is the point that they end up making. All of the particulars I'm losing in my head, but that's the point that they end up making. So yeah. If you want to see a whole bunch of shes, read the book of Ecclesiastes. So, she occurs all the time. Not all the time. It's actually split, but there's a lot. All right, let's keep going. Vered. Kir'i ad sof hapasuk. No. Beginning with vayapilu.
Vayapilu goralot. Vayipol
Agoral. Mi hipilu goralot. Yona. Ve. Yona vehamalachim mahem asu. Yechiel. Hipilu. Mm-hmm. Hipilu.
Hipilu.
Mahem asu. Hem hipilu goralot. David. Ma nafal al Yonah.
Hagorala.
Hakwad?
Hagorala Ipan Yonah.
Tov. Hagoral nafal al Yonah. Tov. Now, the very slight differences in the conjugations and verb forms is very slight here, right? So in the second salmon box, you got venapila, and that's a vav plus cohortative. Let us do this. And then vayapilu is a vayitol form. They did it. Of hipil, a hipil verb. And then vayipol is vayitol form of nafal, a katal verb. Now, the goal in reading fluency is that you can just read it at a pretty normal pace and then catch these slight distinctions that have a ton of meaning differences, right? Versus let us do it, they did something, and then this happened. What I've heard from somebody else is in order to like really catch, to be able to feel the slight variations in the conjugations and inflections and all, is it takes reading about 50 chapters before you can start to get like an intuitive feel for it. Where you don't have to like stop and spend much time analyzing, you just, you just felt it. So, a goal could be, one of your first big goals could be reading the whole book of Genesis. That's 50 chapters. But it's a big goal, because those are long
I was
chapters.
gonna say, some chapters are longer than others.
All right. Root. Kiri ad ha'atnach.
Veyomru, is it alive?
Elav.
Alive. Hagida na Lanu. What? And how far is this one?
Od kufsa. Another box.
Ba'asher Lami Hara'a Hazot Lanu.
David kra ad sof hapasuk.
Manakata.
Mm-hmm.
Ayen.
Mm-hmm. Od.
Arasada.
Mm-hmm.
Ai Nisa
Uh-huh.
Ize Ata.
Uh-huh. Tov. This last one, the emize ata, the very last question. I have it footnoted as emize itself is a question that means from which or from wherever. Now, one reason why I say that it's all one question word is that they can't be a regular demonstrative pronoun, like this people. It can't be, because if it were a demonstrative pronoun, it would have to be after the noun it modifies on. So because it's before, something else is going on, and there is the very clearest point, verse that lets us know exactly what's going on with that question word is this in, oh boy, I think 1 Kings 15:2. So Absalom, he used to rise early, stand beside the way of the gate. This is when he's going to get Israel, the heart of Israel, to turn to him as opposed to David. So Absalom, so any person would come before the king David, but Absalom would call to him and say, he would say, E mize ir ata. It's the same exact construction, E mize ata. But it's from which city are you? And then we can get confirmation that that's what he's asking, because here we get how someone would answer it. The person said, Vayomer me achad shivtei Yisrael, from one of the tribes of Israel. That's what city I'm from. And so then what the sailors are asking him is, from which people are you?
So in the picture, you have different kinds of people that Jonah could fit in with.
Yeah, are you from the mustached people?
Or the red beards,
Oh.
or the purple spiky hairs.
Yeah. Are there any questions about any of those questions? So it seems like the only question that Jonah answers, at least that's recorded in the text, is the very last one.
Maybe a note on the fourth one down, Me'ayin tavo. The form of tavo is kind of weird, like, will you come?
So it's a yitol form.
Yeah.
Me'ayin tavo, because it's ba yavo, so tavo is just the ata yitol form. And this is something that happens with some frequency. So for the most part, you don't expect the yitol to be present tense about what somebody is doing right now. You would expect the participle, but here you get a yitol form in a question. And that seems to happen with some frequency of if you're asking what someone is doing now, you can use yitol. Are there any other questions about that verse?
I mean, Jesse, if you took that out, if you just took it as a pure word, wouldn't you read that, will you come?
Yeah.
I mean, okay. From where will you come, like future rather than past. So it's not like a vav preceding it, changing from previous to past. So
Right.
So how did you explain that?
Yeah.
To mean like, will you say that one more time? Because it looks like it's a future tense. Where will you come?
Right.
And why is it where did you come from?
Well, here we know that it can't be future
Right.
because Jonah has already left from wherever he came from. He's already come from that, right? And so, and just in context and the feel of it, you want to translate it, where are you coming from? Where are you coming from now? It's not like, will you be coming from anywhere, right?
Gotcha.
And so it is a kind of surprising, at least to this point, use of the yitol. But what I said there is that you do get yitol working like present tense in questions. It doesn't always happen. It seems like he very well could have used a participle here.
Not in Hebrew, but this is before that was standard.
All right. Atara, so verse 9. Kir'i ad ha'atnach.
Yone Enehem
Mhm.
Avri Anochi.
Tov. Yechiel, kra ad sof hapasuk.
ואת אדוני אלוהי השמיים אני ירא, אשר עשה את הים ואת היבשה.
Tov. Mi ivri.
Yona. Yona is
Tov. Kol Yona ivri. Tov me'od. Et mi Yona yare. Yere. Et mi Yona yare.
Remind me what Yahweh means.
Fear. Vered, hakol.
El, ahed,
Vered, hakol.
Elohim shel bnei Israel. Adon. Say Elohei ha-Shemayim.
Uh-huh.
Sefer.
Uh-huh. To. Yep, again, I'm looking for a full statement.
Oh, I thought you were saying which God.
Yeah.
Piece that's right of a God.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't here last week when we spoke.
Which one? The etni or the?
Oh, so you don't use et with Adonai?
Oh.
Is that what you're saying?
Oh, that's nice.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
it's
it's direct object marker.
Right.
Take your leadership.
Right.
Sure. Okay, you were.
You're not.
I'm saying,
you're not
should there
gonna-
be, can you use et or not use it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You
So
you
could
can
say
or
either
cannot.
Yonah, Yarei, Adonai, or Yonah, Arei, et Adonai,
Mhm.
right? Okay.
So I'm asking if either one of those is grammatically correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't. You don't always need et wherever there's a definite direct object, but whenever et occurs, it's marking a definite direct object. That's actually a lie, but we're gonna live in a simplified world for now.
Lying to our students.
It's like when you say that atom's the smallest element in science, and then later on you're like, oh, there's neutrons.
There's neutrons and protons in Hebrew grammar. Oh. Mhm.
Yare, a participle.
Mhm.
And that's why you can use it for ani or who.
Ooh. And then, well, how did you know that Yareh was a participle?
Well, originally I didn't think it was, but
Right.
then because you used it for both, you said, so the story is ani yare,
Uh-huh.
and then you said mi yare,
Ah.
and
uh-huh.
so without inflecting it.
Exactly. You can also tell just actually from there, ani yare itself is enough information to tell you it's a participle.
Mhm.
Does anybody know why?
It's redundant. You wouldn't need to say any, and then wouldn't you say like your T or something?
Yareti, if it were a katal form. So it turns out, right, you have memorized yare, yira, so it turns out the same form is katal and participle. It can't be katal here because if it were the katal who form, then you would have a mismatch in person. Ani and then who. But the participle doesn't have person. It's just gender and number. So masculine singular. No matter from what perspective, I can say ani yare, ata yare, hu yare. As long as we're just talking about one guy, we can talk about it from any perspective point with participle.
But you could also say, was it Yareti? How do you say it?
Yeah,
So you
yareti.
could say ani Yareti or Yareti.
Right.
Right. Either one.
Yeah. Ma Adonai asa.
Adonai asa et hayam va'et yavasha.
Uh-huh. So, Baruch. Kara ad ha'atnach. In verse 10.
Vayir'u ha'anashim yir'ah gedolah vayir'u elav ma zot asita.
So, Yered. Kara ad sof hapasuk.
Ki yadu
Uh-huh.
ha'anashim ki milifni
Mm-hmm.
Adonai hu borach
Voreach.
boreach.
Uh,
Oh, ki
Lama amru ha'anashim el Yonah ma zot asita. Lama amru ma zot asita. Mi yodea. Yechiel?
כי האנשים יראו
Aha.
יראה גדולה.
Oh, tov. Hem yaru yirah gedolah. Aha. Yesh od. Lama ha'anashim amru el Yonah ma zot asita. Hem yad'u.
כי הגיד להם כי מלפני אדוני הוא בורח.
Oh, aha. Yonah higid lahem anashim ani voreach milifnei Adonai vehem amru ma zot asita. Ah. Oh.
Oh.
Wait,
Oh.
how did that? That's 10 minutes. So, hem yad'u ki milifnei Adonai Yonah voreach ech yad'u ha'anashim ki Yonah voreach milifnei Adonai. Ech hem yad'u.
הגיד להם.
Mi higid lahem?
יונה.
Yonah. Lemi Yonah higid.
יונה הגיד למלאכים של האוריה בים.
Tov me'od. Yonah higid la'anashim. Any other questions? So basically, I'm always going to ask you about the reference of pronouns. Whenever there's like a pronoun, I'm going to say who. just so that we're making it explicit. I could say parse that pronoun, third person masculine singular referring to the men. Or you could just tell me it in Hebrew, which is way cooler. Yosef. Kra ad ha'anach.
ויאמרו עליו, מה נעשה לך? וישתוק הים מעלינו.
ויאמרו מה נעשה לך? למה לא לך?
Because it's at the end of the clause.
Yes,
It's
nice.
a causal form.
Causal form. So you're used to Miriam, yesh lach telephone, right? And then she could say yesh,
יש לך ספר.
right? So lecha is masculine, lach is feminine. And they just said ma na'aseh lach. This is not a form of Hebrew name calling. But lecha becomes lach as a pausal form. What's a pausal form? It's just a way of staying on a form long enough to indicate there's a pause, a break in prosody is kind of the fancy term for it. So it's putting a break. Basically, the prosody and the flow of where you put breaks, that explains how we can say the Lord's Prayer together. Right? And not like, because if we're each putting pauses in different spots, then it's going to get frustrating, but pretty much I mean, if you say a little bit more, our Father who art in heaven, right? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Right? So you're putting the pauses in those forms. This is like that.
You do say like, oh, and then if you say it longer, like, oh.
Right,
And
yeah.
the sound change.
Yeah.
When you hold it, at least in our accent in this but we don't usually do that except for comment.
Does the feminine change, does it have a pausal form or?
Say that again?
Does the feminine change?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's already-
So basically, pausal forms are usually a lengthening of a vowel, or actually even accenting a word in a different place. But because lach is just a one-syllable word, and because it's written with a commence, which is a long vowel, it can't change. So let's see. Another I said one way is to change accent. So one is when Jonah says Ivri Anochi, because you have it memorized Anochi. Anochi with the accent at the end, but Anochi has the accent on the second syllable.
And we know
Lama,
that because that accent made
Yeah.
the no part.
pausal form. I mean, there's so many pausal forms that you probably don't even recognize, that you don't recognize, like Vayer Adam. It should be Vayer Adam, but it's pausal form, Vayer Adam. Also, Velo Noved should be Novad, but it's Noved.
So you can have an ah that changes to an eh and an eh that changes to an ah.
I know.
And then Ma'artsecha should be Ma'artsecha, but Ma'artsecha. Oh, the Amy Ze'am Ata should be the Amy Ze'am Ata, but it's Ata. So they happen all the time, but basically you don't have to pay attention to them. Really the only thing is that they can trip you up. And so then if you're like, man, that's not exactly how I thought it was, like why are the vowels like that? I thought it would be something different, or the accent sounds weird. Almost assuredly, you're looking at a pausal form, and then you can look, oh, I bet you that, and if it can occur at the end of a clause, and it does, then that's probably just confirmation.
Is this a feature of written text or is this occurring spoken? Like,
See, yeah, it's interesting. That's a really interesting question, and unfortunately, there's no way of telling it because we don't have any speakers.
Right.
But so what we do know is this is the reading tradition of the Masoretic scribes. Now, another thing is that the Masoretic scribes is not the only reading tradition. We do have evidence from other reading traditions. So what we have here in the Masoretic text, as far as vocalizing things and stuff, Hebrew, even when it was a spoken language, it was almost assuredly not a monolithic language. But there are all kinds of varieties. Just like even in the United States today, there are certain varieties of English. And it was probably all the more pronounced because now we have it more uniform today because of radio and television.
And dictionaries.
Yeah.
Just for vocabulary's sake.
The Bible gives evidence to different dialects, you know, like when the Benjamites were coming back through and they were killing all the ones that couldn't pronounce the word right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so that itself is evidence that there was a certain phoneme that people group didn't even have. They didn't even make a certain distinction.
Yeah.
One thing to point out here, we just have a couple minutes left, is so have the gray box because the sea was growing more stormy. That as being the narrator's aside, but it could very well syntactically be the people's words, right? The people themselves could be saying, "What should we do to you so that the sea will be quiet from upon us, because the sea is becoming more stormy?"
Yeah.
There's nothing in the syntax that precludes that.
So is this how it's normally translated though?
No idea.
Or, okay.
Yeah, we don't get quotation marks in the.
Well, in English.
Oh, yeah, I guess in English
how's
they
it
do.
translated?
Oh, yeah, I know. Is it
I
true?
almost never ever look at an English translation.
I think it's.
I just do Greek and Hebrew. Here's what English.
It makes better sense to do it narrative form though.
It's
It sure seems good though.
Because the sea was growing more stormy, so, you know.
right.
It, you know, you're like reading this and it's like narrating it because the sea was becoming more stormy.
Right.
So.
And then it also fits with verse 13,
Yeah.
which we'll get to later today, which for sure the narrator tells us that they rowed to return to the dry land, but they were not able to because the sea was growing more stormy upon them.
It's narrator and like every.
Yeah, narrator.
Okay. But just to say, as far as the syntax, there's nothing to preclude that being the sailors' words themselves. There's really no difference one way or the other. If you have any questions on the final verse, you can ask during break or over the next 5 weeks of the semester. Let's take a 10-minute break.
The NIV actually says the sea was getting rougher and rougher, so they asked him.